So just like with IT, I'm not going to tell you to not go into manufacturing. That would be silly. But you have to have a very realistic approach to what you're going to target. And I think that your geography, combined with the way the global system is changing, provides a lot lower risk, a lot higher value opportunities for you. Let's start with energy. This is total investment from all government and all private into all oil and all natural gas globally. Now, back in 2014 at the peak, a narrative took hold that fossil fuels are done. Not necessarily for directly environmental reasons, but the idea was that it takes 3 to 8 years to bring a conventional field online, and then another 5 to 15 years for that investment to break even. Well, if you're thinking that we need to be to a carbon neutral environment by 2040, we're already past the time window for the investment. So why would you put your money into a project that will never pay you back? Now, I can find a freight train of logical disconnects in that particular logic chain, but it took hold in all of the world's financial centers, and among other things, we got ESG out of that. 3 to 8 years for break even. Stick with that. Now, luckily, what is true for the average is not true for each individual piece. I like to call this the checkbook map, because every dot up there is someone who paid their power bill. Here are the world's conventional oil and natural gas basins. In one snapshot, this is globalization, the agony of globalization, getting the energy from where it's produced to where we actually use it. And this is where the world's commercially viable shale deposits are. There are 20-odd reasons why American energy is fundamentally different compared to the energy complex of every other country. But considering the environment we're in today, this is by far the most important. Here, only here, we produce it where we live. This is the upper Midwest. Has anyone ever done anything other than fly over the Midwest here? Okay. That there is Marshalltown, Iowa, where I'm from. What the hell is this? That's western North Dakota, population 4.5. The half is someone flying over. It's lit up not because there's a frat party, it's lit up because of a problem with transport. Oil's a liquid. It conforms to the shape of the container it's in. You can put it into a rail car, a truck, whatever you want. But natural gas disperses. You have to have a system to gather it, to transport it, to distribute it, to use it, all at the same pace because storage is very difficult and very expensive. Here in the United States, in the shale patches, so much nat gas is bubbling up out of the oil projects as a byproduct. We have to flare it. You can see the flares from space. It's the same in the Permian. It's the same in the Eagle Ford. That's a very different price structure. These producers are basically giving the stuff away just to get rid of it. These red arrows, those are hurricanes. You see these blue spikes? That's Henry Hub. Old story. Storm comes through the Gulf. They shut down everything. They go out after the storm, repair the damage. That's how it was until 2009, because that is the year in the United States, well, in North America, where shale production produced over half of global demand, half of regional demand. Every shale well's on shore. The other two lines are the pricing for Chinese and European natural gas. This little spot right here. Do we have any Texans here? I should know if I'm making fun of someone before I do it. Okay. This little spike right here, this is what happened in January of 21 when Texas got cold. Got down to 25. And everything stopped. Oil, natural gas, solar, wind, nuclear. Oh my God, there were snowmen in San Antonio. They were sad snowmen, but they lasted for 2 weeks. Everyone in Austin just made margaritas. And this right here, this is what we've been dealing with because of the Ukraine war. Back in September, we hit $9, and we lost our minds. $9 in the United States, $9 natural gas. In inflation index terms, that's exactly the 50-year average. We have been bitching about average energy prices. And then you can see what's happening everywhere else. We produce it here. We use it here. We don't import it from a continent away or from a genocidal dictator. We don't have to make an adjustment. And we have a very different pricing structure because of it. This is the new normal, folks. This sort of energy price split between us and the rest of the world. Can you imagine what that does in a competitive, globalized environment? Can you imagine what it does in a deglobalizing system where they can't even get it at all? This is as good as it's going to be for the rest of them for a minimum of 20 years. And natural gas and electricity prices here are in the bottom 10% of the United States. If you can't use energy in Greater Shreveport to do something, something is wrong. There are a lot of sectors out there that are energy intensive, that are about to fall into global shortage, and I suggest you move into all of them. Let's start with chemicals. This is a ridiculously overcomplicated graphic. I blame the Europeans. On the right, you start with crude oil. You refine that into tens of thousands of daughter products we use every day with an intermediate step called naphtha. You usually do this through an oil refinery. Or, on the right, you start with natural gas, same general process, but first you have an intermediate step called ethylene. Now, this relatively narrow product set, these are the things that normally you can only make from natural gas. But in the United States, where natural gas is really, really cheap, we use it to do all of this. That's everything from windows to sports equipment to insulation to glass to diapers to makeup to tires. So, you have the Haynesville next door, which is one of the world's great natural gas fields. These are all options. Every circle and square up there is something you could do. And if you don't want to, you can import the stuff from refineries nearby, whether it's New Orleans or Houston, and then do the next step into heavy industry and get into any of those products I just mentioned, plus about 10,000 others. The materials are all right here already. It's heavy manufacturing. You're not making a computer, but you will make the things that allow us to make absolutely everything that we use every day. The most fun of all of these is this little guy right here. That's fertilizer. Nitrogen fertilizer. So we've lost potash because of the Ukraine war. And because natural gas is so expensive everywhere, but here we're losing nitrogen very, very quickly. That's 2 of the 3 nutrients. We'll talk about the third one here in a minute. All right, let's say you don't like conventional oil and gas, although we're in Shreveport, that would be weird. But there are business opportunities in other things. What we're looking at here is what goes into an electric vehicle versus a normal vehicle. Now, a normal vehicle or a normal power plant, it's really pretty straightforward. You get the fuel in there, you light a match, you set it on fire, you capture the heat. Yes, it's more complicated than that, but it's really, this is old technology. We figured this out 150 years ago. But if you want electricity, you gotta do more, because the transmission and the storage, that's really involved in terms of engineering and materials. So this is the type of material that goes into EVs versus conventional vehicles. It's an order of magnitude more complicated, more materials and more of them. Now we understand in our gut the pain and the complexity of a fossil fuel-based fuel system, because you have to deal with Iran and Iraq and Venezuela and Russia. But if we want to do the green transition, if that is really our goal, then we need to deal with Canada and Mexico and Peru and Chile and Bolivia and Brazil and Argentina and South Africa and Gabon and Congo and Eritrea and Ethiopia and Mozambique and Australia and Vietnam and Indonesia and Malaysia and China and Pakistan and Turkey and Mongolia and Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and, oh yeah, still Russia. You think oil geopolitics was a pain in the ass? Oh my God. You're not going to mine lithium here. But every material has to be processed so it can be used. These are the 12 most common materials that go into the green revolution. We need to double the amount of copper. We need 10 times as much nickel and lithium. We need 18 times as much graphite. And processing all of that stuff takes power. Everything that is a red wedge up there is processed primarily in China, and it will be going to zero. We're never going to do the green revolution, not at the scope and the speed that some people think. But we're going to try, and we're going to make some progress. And even if all we want is lithium batteries for our laptops and our phone, we're still going to need more than we have right now because we're going to lose a lot of what we have right now. And it has to be replaced. And it has to be processed somewhere with maritime access and cheap electricity. Any takers? All right, let's say you want something a little less exotic. You want good old-fashioned steel. Most countries follow the same process. You start on the left here, you get iron ore, you throw it into a blast furnace with usually a bunch of coal, you basically melt the crap out of it and burn off all the impurities. That leaves you with an intermediate product called pig iron, which is useless, but it's a necessary step. That pig iron is then processed on in a more advanced facility, often part of the same complex, into rolled steel. The hot rolled steel is the stuff that's structurally strong, but not necessarily resistant to corrosion, and it's kind of ugly. So it's your car frame or the rebar in concrete. Or the high-end stuff, the cold rolled, that's the shiny stuff. If you can see steel in anything, in your watch, on a roof, that's cold rolled steel.